Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar comic review. This one's going to be for this new release just out today and also tomorrow in comic book stores, so it's 17th/18th of June for the Avatar The Last Airbender, Lost Adventures and Team Avatar Tales. Weird wording about the trying to look up the title for this book. It's effectively the short story collection collected together. It's two short story collections collected together into, in this case, a omnibus edition. But of course, this book has already been released back in 2020 as a library edition hardcover. So your buying decision for this book is effectively between these two, in my opinion. Sure, there is the individual copies of The Lost Adventures and Team Avatar Tales, which I'll show off in just a moment. But I do think you should probably be going for these kind of more updated kind of collections of these books, because this is the buying decision. It's, do you want the cheaper, smaller, non-hardcover version, or do you want the kind of bigger, hardcover, slightly more expensive version of the book? The content within them is identical. Because this is a book that doesn't have annotations on the side of the pages, it's just straight out to the sides of the pages, full art basically, no messing around with borders. It means that nothing has to be dropped as we go into the omnibus format. Even the extra section at the back is exactly the same. You have all of the kind of art, concept art stuff at the back. Nothing edited. It's all here. All the pages are here, laid out exactly the same. The books are identical outside of just the kind of size and kind of presentation of the kind of covers and book, basically. So that's the kind of whole idea here. There's only one visual difference to the covers, and that is if you look at the logo for Avatar on each of them. This released in 2020, so it was pre-Avatar Studios, which of course was announced to us in February 2021. So they're still using the original Avatar logo, which has the kind of course, Chinese text up at the top. Whereas, of course, the newer release books, they swapped over eventually to using the Avatar logo with the element symbols. That's the only real difference. The back of these books is basically the same. It's just slightly laid out differently. This one's going for more of the kind of full art kind of look, whereas this one has more of the boxes for the blurb and stuff like that. One thing of note with the omnibus format is perhaps the spine. Unfortunately, they've not done anything fancy with this one. They're not trying to fit this in with the other stuff for Avatar, where there's a spine image for the promise to imbalance. This is just separate on its own. Lost Adventures, Team Avatar Tales, and they have an image of Toph and the pebble from one of the stories from that's from Team Avatar Tales, of course. So that's fine. Just to quickly go over the spine image thing a little bit more. Here is the Promise Omnibus Edition. So you can see straight away, omnibus size is kind of very similar. The only difference between these books is the thickness, just because a standard one for like a 3-part story is 216 pages because it's 3 72-page books added together. This is more like 300 plus pages because it's so many short stories from the relatively big Lost Adventures. And while Team Avatar Tales is a pretty thin book, it still adds a decent amount of pages. So this is actually a quite thick book here. Hence why it's $30 versus the usual $25 for an omnibus edition, because there is nearly 100 extra pages in this one. But the spine image stuff, you can see here that the Promise has part of the spine image, and this doesn't have anything going on. I thought that maybe they could do something like where if they asked you to put this first, it could fill in the kind of start of the image a little bit more, but I guess they just went for the simple and plain option here, not forcing you on where to put the short story collection in your collection when you line up the books on your shelves. So that's just the situation there. Just to be complete, let's cover the two books that make this up as a kind of individual thing. Because I know a lot of people who don't maybe pay attention to the comics might see that like, oh, there's a new Avatar comic out, and kind of think that like that means there's new content in it, when it is just a new edition of, like I said, a book from 2020, which itself was a collected edition of books from 2011, and 2019. So The Lost Adventures, of course, is this book. It was Dark Horse's first like comic release, because of course when they got into doing Avatar stuff like just prior to Korra, they did the Avatar art book, and they did The Lost Adventures as like a short story collection just prior to like the Promise and stuff like that, the main Avatar comics, of course, that we have. So this is a July 2011 kind of first edition copy of this, highlighting that like it's nearly 15 years old. So the comics are actually getting to be a quite like old kind of thing, just because we're going back like that far. And it's a great book. Like, this book still holds up. So many of the actual individual stories in this, even though they are quite old at this point, are really, really good. It's very telling that this book collects these two together, because this is a memorable short story collection, and this, I think, is just a really forgettable book. Outside of the fact that it reprints three really good stories, which are the 3 free comic book day books, Rebound Shells and Sisters, they're the kind of highlight. And it feels like, to a certain degree, like that, like the main reason this book got made was because those stories needed to get reprinted into something at some point, and they did it, and they added in a bunch of extra stories. But I've always found a lot of the extra stories to be a little bit on the forgettable side. They're not bad by any means, but not as memorable as quite a lot of the kind of original short stories in this one. So yeah, that's just to kind of highlight that what the collected edition is these two books added together. But again, you get the extras, the concept art extras at the back of the collected editions. They're not present in these ones. So my recommendation is that you probably don't need to really look at these in terms of getting into the comics, just because you're better off with one of the collected editions, hardcover or Omnibus, depending on if you want to go for the fancy big book or the cheaper, smaller book, that whole idea. The only real appeal to these is just that having them as their separate releases if you want to be complete on a lot of the releases. But that's just the kind of situation there, basically. So that's basically it. Otherwise, like, this book is identical. Like I said, it's just the library edition shrunk down without the hardcover, that whole idea. All the layout in the middle is exactly the same. Like I said, with the way the kind of pages are done, the table of contents is identical, separating the books out into, of course, Lost Adventures, splits them into book 1, book 2, book 3. And then Team Avatar Tales is just added into the book 4 section, the kind of extra stories section, along with the 2 non-canon stories from Lost Adventures, the, gym time and stuff like that, new recruits, that whole idea. So, yeah, it's one of these releases that's not super exciting if you're super familiar with the comics. I think it's a really nice one to have, just to give you the buying option if you're getting into the comics now. That Dark Horse seemed to be really committing to the idea going forward that any kind of series of comics that they do is going to get a hardcover release and eventually an omnibus edition release. That if you don't get the like original kind of chunks of comics as they come out, the parts, short stories releases and stuff like that, there will be options with collected editions for you. That is shown by the fact that, say, Team Avatar Treasury, the first Avatar one-shot stuff, is getting an omnibus that's coming out in a couple of months, and it already has a hardcover as well. So that's that. The only other thing to say is just that, just in case anyone's maybe asking, there is no update to this book from 2020, from the initial releases. There have been short stories that have been released since Team Avatar Tales came out. None of those are added into this book or anything like that. We are still waiting for a couple of those other Avatar Free Comic Book Day comics to be collected into what we assume will be probably like another book along the lines of Team Avatar Tales, if Dark Horse would ever announce another book. I think we have Matcha Makers. We have the comic from, I think, like 2 years ago. We had one. and then this year's one with Appa and Momo, Samurai Appa, Ronin Momo. So there's at least 3 Free Comic Book Day books that do need to be collected, in the same way that, of course, Team Avatar Tales reprinted 3 of them. So I think we've been kind of maybe waiting for some sort of a short story collection. I hope they do it, because I like having all those comics available. And even though, sure, online you can read all those comics, it's fine. I think it's nice to have the option to just buy a book that has all the content in it. And the fact that there are these 3 separate stories that you do have to explain to people that, like, oh yeah, unless you go to, like, eBay and buy the Free Comic Book Day books that maybe you weren't able to get, you have to wait for an arbitrary release at some point in the future. So that's just the situation there. But yeah, gonna basically wrap it up there. What I will say about this is that, look, this is mainly a review of the kind of edition in comparison to like other editions of the comics, kind of explaining what it is. I've of course talked already at length, and I've done tons of stuff on the channel previously about the Lost Adventures, about Team Avatar Tales specifically, the stories. So I'll just put it out there at the end here. Would you guys like to see me do a kind of actual review of the short story content? Actually go back over those short stories and do a video kind of talking about them kind of at length. So, you know, we've already done the whole edition situation, but do you want to see me talk about, like, Be Calm, you know, Going Home Again, all these short stories that are collected in this again, in a more modern video, kind of to go along basically with this. I didn't do it straight away just because I'm not sure the appeal necessarily was there, but let me know some feedback below if you would like to see a more up-to-date review of the stories in this book. But otherwise, if you have any questions about the release, the editions, getting into the Avatar comics, let me know down below. Otherwise, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.